It is a Zoom webinar. So that means that we cannot see or hear you, even though you can see and hear us. You will notice that there is a Q&A function. And this is where we really hope we'll have some great dialogue and discussion. You have the option to post comments and questions through the Q&A as an anonymous attendee, if you would prefer to do so. And then we will keep an eye on that and hope that we can answer those questions as we go, but certainly save some time at the end to address those questions. I think those are all of our housekeeping notes. So let's go ahead and get started. I want to give you some context for what we plan to talk about today. First and foremost, providing you with tactical tools that will range from paid to free resources. Many of these, both of us have used in our professional and personal arenas. Our hope is then to share context for how and why to consider using personality strengths as a factor when you are building your working groups, your teams, when you're delegating roles among your staff. And as I mentioned earlier, we do hope to provide some data to support these claims. So maybe you are in a position where you're starting to plan for a team retreat or staff development, hoping to make that ask for financial support to fund these personality tests. So we're hoping to give you some information that you can use when making that ask. While the scope of this presentation is focused on personality strengths alone, we do feel it's important to acknowledge that personality strengths are just one tool in your toolbox, and it should not be the sole resource used in hiring, assigning responsibilities, or roles. So background, life experiences and privileges, former work environments, and individual circumstances really should be additional considerations. We'll discuss a bit further in the presentation what it looks like to infuse personality tests into your role as a mentor, coach, or supervisor when you're working at the individual level. So Amy and I will speak to our use of personality strengths in our respective roles, but we do hope that our audience represents individuals of various stages in your own professional careers, and we'll get a sense for who you are in just a minute. But first, we'd like to introduce ourselves formally to you within the framework of our discussion. So my name is Melissa Cline. I currently serve as Director of Admissions at Furman University, which is a smaller liberal arts college in Greenville, South Carolina. I've worked for Furman for almost 10 years and in my current role for 1 year. I am an oldest child. I am married. I have two young children of my own. Of the assessments we'll be talking about today, you might notice that my Enneagram and Myers Briggs and Clifton strengths would give you the perception and assumption that I am type A, tend to lean towards perfectionist characteristics, both good and bad. I'm also a Libra, so I know we're not talking about astrology, but I think it does fit with some of my Clifton strengths, especially as it relates to the harmony strength. I was exceptionally reserved and shy as a child, and I do tend to fall more on the kind of the I side of the introversion extroversion spectrum. Amy, I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, y'all. So great to be here. My name is Amy Moffatt, and I actually just recently started at Towson University as the Assistant Vice President for University Admissions. So unfortunately, I will be leaving the SACAC region, but I hope to see you all around in the future at future events. But my previous role, as some of you have known me was at the University of South Carolina, serving as the Director of National Recruitment. And for most of my tenure, I was at the University of South Carolina and Armstrong State University. In regards to my personality types, I am the definition of a problem solver. I love finding solutions to challenges or unique situations. And I'm an achiever and producer. So I really enjoy staff development and seeing others grow around me. But I'm also aware of my dominant personality types and recognize that these are areas that I can improve in while also kind of taking a seat and letting others shine before me. Unlike Melissa, I am an extrovert. However, the past 6 years working from home and working in a remote capacity, I have seen myself shift more to the introverted side of the scale. So I feel like I'm right there in the middle, depending on the situation.
Awesome. Thanks, Amy. So now that you know a little bit about us, our hope is to learn a little bit more about you before we formally jump into the presentation. So my dear colleague, Metro Tech Michael, would you mind launching that first poll for us? In this poll, you're going to see a series of questions. So first and foremost, we want to get a sense for who is in the audience today and what sector of college admissions your current role best represents. How long have you been in this field? I'm curious to see how many experts we have and how many new faces. And then we are interested to know if you've used any personality strengths assessments or tests as part of your team developments, whether you have led that or you have been a member of a team that has previously used personality tests. And we'll give a couple of minutes to see the poll results coming in. Perfect. Interesting mix of years in the field. I love to see that. Perfect. And an interesting mix of question number 3. So I'm going to give it maybe 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2. I can already tell you, you guys are an engaged group. I think that's the highest percentage of poll participation I've seen. So you've come to the right presentation. Perfect. So here are the results of our poll. So it is predominantly a 4-year college, both private and public, pretty well represented. Love my high school representatives, CBOs as well. Thank you for joining us. How long have you been in the field? So most of you are relatively new to the field, which I love, and also hoping that we can rely on those of you who have been in the field for 11 plus years to really give some feedback and discussion through the Q&A chat. So help us along as we continue through the presentation. But what I'm most intrigued and happy to see is that this is something that's been a part of your team development previously, and that a lot of you have had really great experiences with it. That's certainly our hope. Perfect. So I'm going to close that out. So whether you are joining us as a seasoned college admissions expert, just beginning your career in higher education, or maybe somewhere in the middle, we do hope that our discussion today will provide an opportunity for reflection on how you may consider your colleagues' personalities, how you shape and communicate with your teams, how you tap into your own personality strengths to really create more meaningful and impactful professional relationships. So I'm going to turn it over to Amy, who's going to dig a little bit more into the why and what of our discussion today.
Awesome. Thanks, Melissa. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about why to use personality tests. So the first and foremost reason is you really want to discover and utilize team strengths. So discovering team strengths in your members will help you delegate tasks and know how to utilize everyone most effectively. Finding blind spots on a team brings incredible insight and really reveals where everyone needs to work with greater intentionality. You also can play to strengths. So when you get the results of assessments, you'll be able to identify patterns and similarities along with employees so you can cater to their talents and interests. You also want to be able to understand team members better. So personality tests are an undeniable useful tool for creating a stronger and more efficient team. They can help you learn about your colleagues' communication styles, preferred style of feedback, and even how to modify your own attitude towards personalities that might clash with yours. The more you understand how people in your team work, the better you'll be able to cultivate a culture that enables them to avoid issues. And then the third reason why is to develop stronger team relationships. These kind of all mirror one another, but by grouping employees who know how to work well together is far better than throwing people together and hoping things will work out. Personality tests can really help you do this by building teams with complementary personalities and skill sets. So taking compatibility into consideration can also help reduce personality clashes that leads to work delays. It can also help fill all the unique roles that a project requires and move your projects along to be completed. By taking the time to create teams based on how to respond in certain situations, you're going to have more confidence in your employees and in their work. The fourth reason why is appreciation and motivation. Each of us will likely spend about a third of our lives at work, which is kind of crazy to think about, but If we're going to be spending that much time in a work environment, why not go the extra mile to ensure each of your team members feel appreciated for the work that they're doing? So by completing certain assessments, you'll be able to understand unique ways to think, encourage, and appreciate one another. You can also find out ways that your team members accept feedback and how they form close bonds with others. When applied, the end result is a tailored work relationship that promotes collaboration and psychological safety. And then last but not least, improve company culture. Personality tests can be a great tool for managers who really want to improve company culture. As a leader, you want your company's culture to be positive and efficient as possible. A major part of this is ensuring that every employee is in the role best suited for them, based not only on interest and talents, but also personality. So using personality assessment works best in an organization where the overall culture is one of growth, development, and team building to achieve outcomes and goals, rather than a competitive one focused strictly on hitting the numbers. So now let's dive a little bit more into the types of personality tests out there and the reasons why you might want to use this certain personality test over others, and then giving you an applicable or real type situation that may give you some more insight of why you would want to use this. So the first one is probably the most common one that everyone is aware of, which is Myers Briggs. There's also a free version of the Myers Briggs type of personality, which is called 16 personalities. So Myers Briggs breaks down humanity into a combination of 4 letters to create 16 personalities. So really with a quick assessment, you'll be able to discover your MBTI personality type, and each letter represents the following: how you best recharge, so are you an introvert or an extrovert? How you intake information, sensing or intuition, how you make decisions, thinking or feeling, how you accomplish tasks and manage your life, judging or perceiving. So why should you take this test? You know, the Myers-Briggs or 16 personalities test separates people into 16 categories of personalities. So it provides insights and general strengths and weaknesses, desires and ambitions, communication styles, how people perceive you, and how you see the world. The goal of knowing about personality type is to understand and appreciate differences between people. As all of these types are equal, there is no best type. So in organizations and workplaces, the indicator is particularly useful with teams for conflict management and performance improvement, employee coaching, management development, or executive coaching. So in addition to Myers-Briggs, 16 Personalities has a section on their website that really gives you detailed information for workplace habits. So it'll break it down for how to work with your colleagues, how to work with managers, how managers can work with employees, and it also provides some career path information based on your personality type. So why would you use this, or how's an example that you could use this? These insights can be very helpful to understand conflict, especially between a manager and an employee. So for example, perhaps your manager has difficulty delegating and oftentimes ends up finishing projects herself or himself rather than giving them to you. Since you are cooperative and desire harmony, you don't push back or ask for more tasks than you're given. By better understanding each other, hopefully you and your manager can recognize the situation from an unbiased perspective. So maybe by taking the Myers-Briggs assessment or 16 personalities, your manager might realize that he or she needs to lower their skepticism and trust you're capable of meeting high expectations. At the same time, you might realize your warm-hearted nature is holding you back from asking for more responsibilities, even though you know you can handle it. The next personality type is called Clifton Strengths, which is previously called StrengthsFinder for those who may be a little bit more experienced in the room that took StrengthsFinder, or there's a free version that's called the High Five test. So Clifton Strengths is an incredible self-development and team building tool. It actually presents 35 attributes or strengths, which are categorized into 4 domains: strategic thinking, executing, influencing, and relationship building. And this questionnaire will really uncover your top 5 strengths, or you'll be able to see all 35 strengths ranked from, strongest to weakness. So why should you take this exam? Knowing your strengths will help you understand where you naturally perform and help highlight the blind spots you need to keep in mind. So an example of this one, or kind of a real life application, is maybe you're hosting a social team kind of builder committee for a summer retreat. And you want to pair all the people who had StrengthsFinders in the relationship building categories. So these are your staff members that are going to be passionate and driven by team cohesion and harmony, and probably are going to be the best to serve on this committee. So that could be a great reason of why you might want to use StrengthsFinder or Clifton Strengths or High Five. Enneagram. An Enneagram is a 9-pointed star, which is a perfect depiction for this model of 9 basic personality types. So the 9 types of the Enneagram are divided between heart, head, and body. So the heart types depend on their emotional intelligence to understand their own reactions and connect with others. So these are the 2, 3s, and 4s. So this is a giver, achiever, and an individualist. The head types depend on their intellectual intelligence to make sense of things and navigate the world around them. These are our 5, 6, and 7. So the investigator, skeptic, and enthusiasm. And then we have our body types, which depend on the instinctual intelligence to follow their gut and respond to threats and opportunities. So these are our 8, 9s, and 1s, the challenger, the peacemaker, and the perfectionist. You know, the Enneagram goes beyond basic personality descriptions, really diving deeply into an individual's soul. So you probably have seen this very popular on some social media platforms. It uncovers your healthy and unhealthy self, your childhood hurts, your greatest fears, your tips for self-improvement, and so much more. So why use the Enneagram is really to help you understand yourself as you truly are, and to understand others to create that harmonious relationship. So how to apply it? You know, Melissa mentioned that she's a type 1, a perfectionist, and she has a very strong sense of right and wrong, which is probably a great reason why she's the chair of our admissions practices committee. But she is very well organized and she strives for change and improvement, but she's fearful of making a mistake. On the other hand, myself, I'm an achiever, so type 3. I'm an ambitious, I'm self-assured. It says I'm charming. I don't know if that's true, but my downfall can be workaholism and competitiveness. So 1 and 3 combination are actually really great together. We can be accomplished, high energy, we can be competent and impressive, either individually or collectively. However, if our relationship gets in trouble, it's going to be over time commitment, lack of emotional attachment to each other, or a creeping sense of competition. So Melissa might find myself as a workaholic or too concerned with image, and whereas in turn, I may find Melissa too rigid and judgmental in her attitudes in different areas. So knowing our different types, sorry if you guys can hear the siren outside my window. So knowing our different types when going to work on this project can be so valuable of what's going to be, you know, compliments and pitfalls, and really is going to assist us in this working relationship and how to accomplish the goals with both of our strengths in mind. The LOGB is a quick personality test. It only takes about 5 minutes. So if you're looking for a quick one, this is a great way to learn about your strengths and weaknesses and how they can be applied to the workplace. So LOGB, each stands for an animal. It's the lion, the otter, the golden retriever, and the beaver. And it's going to represent your dominant personality type or your natural workplace strengths, weaknesses, and how you'll respond to most situations. So why use this one? You know, this test results is going to include motivations, communication, and decision-making styles, and how you react to tense situations. So for instance, if you have an L or a lion, they're known to make impulsive decisions, and in tense situations, they're going to take command. And a G or a golden retriever is going to make decisions slowly, and in tense situations often gives into opinions or wishes of others. So this is very helpful information to know, because if you have few, you know, lions or you have few otters on your team, you're going to want to make sure that you're creating a space for all types of these personalities to be heard. So just make sure that you're hearing from all 4 animals instead of just 1 or 2 that may be more the dominant in that kind of situation. And then another test that we wanted to put on here, you may be thinking, Holland Code career test. Why would I want my employees taking a career test? Well, this 10-minute questionnaire, so another quick one, is really going to measure your interest in 6 major job areas and uses the model to provide potential career paths based on interest. So why would managers want to take this? It really helps employees with workplace interests and can help employees define a career path that would most likely make them happy. So ultimately, the test is meant to help employees learn about their professional motivations and aptitudes before matching them with roles best suited for their strengths. So why would I use this as a manager? I think 3 or 30 is a great tagline in our profession. So this could be a really great test to maybe implement in year 2 or year 3 of a new employee's tenure to really, see where their career path is and kind of make sure that you're opening that dialogue and maybe creating an IDP or an individualized development plan that could incorporate these test results for their future, either at this company or maybe not, maybe somewhere else. The DISC assessment task is determining where you lie on 4 DISC factors. So it's dominance, influence, steadiness, and compliance. So why would you use the DISC assessment versus any of those other ones? Well, this is going to help describe human behavior in various situations. So for example, how you respond to challenges, how you influence others, your preferred pace, and how you respond to rules and procedures. So how to apply it. This is a really fun activity that you could do with DISC profiles. You can break each of the DISC profiles, because there's 4 of them, into 4 different groups, and then ask them a series of questions about their email inbox. How do they check it? How often would they like to check it? Come up with a great subject line. Tell me about emails that cause you stress. How quickly do you respond? And then you have each of the groups share results. And then you're going to be able to start to see the differences between the 4 different types. How did one DISC style affect how they use email? Do you think you could tell someone's DISC style after receiving emails from them? And what did you learn about how to work better with each other? So that's a great activity to kind of highlight on when you might want to use the DISC assessment. All right, love languages. You might be thinking, okay, Amy, where are you going with this one? But there's a work version. So there is a book to help supervisors and managers effectively communicate appreciation and encouragement to their employees. So for those who have heard of, the 5 love languages, it's very similar, just a work version. It takes out physical touch, which is good. Or you would have some HR representatives looking into your management style. But anyways, the reason why for the 5 love languages work version is to make sure someone feels appreciated. It will result in higher levels of job satisfaction, healthier relationships between managers and employers, and decreased cases of burnout. So how to use this? One thing to know is that a motivation appreciation is not a one-size-fits-all approach. If you're going to utilize this assessment, then you're absolutely going to need to follow up and personalize appreciation for each staff member. For example, if you find out that some of your team members like words of affirmation, while others prefer receiving gifts, perhaps then you put a package of cookies on one coworker's desk after she hits a workplace milestone, or you write a thoughtful note to another colleague. So either way, that's one way that you can kind of apply that. The Adobe Creative Types is a fun assessment, and it really gets down to your creative personality, and it looks at different, tendencies like how you think, how you act, how you see the world to better understand who you are as a creative. So why use this one? You'll gain a deeper understanding of your motivations, plus insight into how to maximize your natural gifts and face your challenges. How to use this? This is a fun one to test if you have creative people on your team. So if you're a larger office and you do have maybe marketers or communication, graphic designers, website editors, a part of your admissions teams, this may be a good test to use. Or if you have folks who just hate personality tests and they don't see the point of them, it reminds them of a career fair, then this may be a good test as well for your team to kind of bring it from a different light. The 5 factors markers, or the Big 5 assessment, or FFM, identifies a person's openness to an experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. So it's called OCEAN. So why would you use this one? You can learn who is likely to cooperate with team decisions, who is more competitive and likely to go against the grain, who is talkative and assertive, who is highly organized, and who has a strong impulse control. I think all of these are so important in the field of admissions. So this might be a great assessment for our field in particular, but how to apply it. So this test is great to take for yourself, but then it is really easy to identify how others might fit into the OCEAN categories. So for example, you could ask yourself these questions to identify an open person on your team. Who is the most adventurous? Who's inventive? Who's curious? Who tries the most new ideas? And this allows others to identify other strengths on a team, whereas maybe they didn't think that they were curious or inventive, but other people pinged them in this category. And then last but not least, and I actually edited the Helen Fisher's personality test and made a new one because Helen Fisher's personality test was a little bit more, it wasn't applicable to our line of work. So I did True Colors instead. So True Colors represents a primary personality test for all 4 layers of a True Colors. It's very fun and insightful. Why you want to use this is it really fosters an environment of understanding and collaboration. It'll help individuals understand how personality tests best interact with each other. And it's actually really quick and easy. I use it in an interview setting whenever I'm interviewing for either regional representatives or other positions. So I'm going to ask all of you, we're going to have a poll for it, but I'm going to give you each the 4 colors and I'll describe each of the colors. And I'd like for you to choose one color that you closely align with. In the interview, I would also ask for the person interviewing to give us the second color that they do not align with. So the one they closely, and then the furthest away, and reasons why. So just so you know. So you have orange, which is energetic, spontaneous, charming. You have gold, which is punctual, organized, precise. Green, which is analytical, intuitive, visionary. And then blue, which is empathetic, compassionate, and cooperative. So if Michael, if you could go ahead and launch poll 2, if everyone will go ahead and think about it, which one do you mostly align with? This will be a really interesting one since we're all admissions folks, either the high school or the college side. So I'm really curious of these results.
I know.
So anyways, go ahead.
I was going to say it's super interesting so far.
So while everyone is doing that, one thing to keep in mind, I think, is this is a really good assessment to do with your teams to see what might be missing. So if you have a lot of blues, because we are relationship people, we care about, how other people are feeling, then you may want to, in the interview, maybe you need some of these other colors to help complement your team. So these are things to kind of assess on the front end whenever you're hiring. But it looks like, I think mostly everyone has voted. So let's see what everyone's results are. Oh, okay. It looks like the highest one was blue. So we have a lot of empathetic, compassionate, and cooperative people in our field, or at least in this session. But we have a lot of the other types too. So it's great. We are glad all of you are here. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Melissa.
Awesome. Thanks, Amy. I know it's so fascinating to see personalities from behind a screen. So thanks for indulging us in another poll to get to know you a little bit better. So Amy's done a really great job of outlining so many of the common personality tests on the market, so many to choose from. So hopefully you've learned a little bit about some additional resources, some different tests that you may not have been familiar with. And what I really want to focus on is kind of the how to use it within the various roles on your team, and then focus on how as leaders we can really continue the conversation after that one team retreat or that one staff development opportunity. First, let's talk about staff hiring, and I did proceed with caution for a reason. There are mixed opinions on the use of personality strengths assessments as part of the hiring process, but 1 in 5 Fortune 1000 companies use the Myers Briggs test in their hiring process, and that's according to Marketplace. And the reason to be skeptical for the use of personality tests in the hiring process is for the potential for creating bias at an early stage in job applicant consideration. So using personality tests may help managers find candidates among a really large pool of applicants for a very specific position. But what these tests don't account for are character, environment, current emotional state. I have to admit that if I did a personality test right now versus last year, the answers might have been drastically different. It also doesn't consider the other factors addressed at the outset of this presentation. So background and life experiences being an example. It's also hard to imagine that a one-time, potentially quick assessment could do anything more than simply typify individuals really at that earliest stage of job candidacy and early in the application process. As Amy pointed out, there's absolutely an opportunity to use shorter versions in the interview process as an interview question, and the true colors being a perfect example of that. Frequently, and honestly, maybe the experience of many of our audience members, personality tests are used as a tool for annual staff retreats and team development. Employees and employers often focus on the importance of creating company culture. That's a term that Amy used earlier. And the use of personality tests really help to identify soft and strategic skills at the individual level. These sorts of assessments can be a great foundation for building culture, collaboration, respect for how our fellow coworkers navigate their roles and responsibilities, how they navigate their day-to-day. It is important to consider, though, that some individuals may feel uncomfortable taking these assessments in a public forum, such as a team retreat. So it is important to be really thoughtful in which assessment to use, the forum that it's conducted in, and what type of follow-up dialogue is being used as a group. These assessments can create community, collaboration, better understanding. There is the potential pitfall of using assessments for team retreats, and is not to create meaningful use of this information moving forward. I'll talk a little bit later as it relates to the role of the manager, the coach, or the supervisor, and continuing that conversation. We'll tell you, reflecting over this past recruiting cycle, so much of what our professional roles and responsibilities have evolved dramatically. So our road warriors are now Zoom, Google Meet, and Microsoft Teams experts. Our staff, who at one point thrived in one-on-one conversations, may not be the best presenters in a virtual realm. Our extrovert-leaning staff may be struggling to find their energy source right now, whereas our introvert-leaning staff members may be thriving in a work-from-home environment. And I'll kind of include myself there. I love being able to work from home. So whether through the use of formal personality tests or simply through intentional exercises to create meaningful conversations, as a team or individually with your direct reports, considering individual strengths when creating working groups, delegating roles, simply identifying ways to help employees feel fulfilled is important now more than ever. In one of my graduate school classes, we spent a lot of time talking about different styles of negotiation. And I kept coming back to this, thinking about this presentation and how it really connects to personality strengths. So negotiation oftentimes conjures up this image of negotiating for promotions, salary raises, terms of a new job. But really, we enter into negotiation in almost all interactions with the families that visit our campus, with our colleagues, with our bosses, with our direct reports. So certainly no more true than working through conflict resolutions, mediation, and creating space for open dialogue among colleagues. A personal relationship is not going to thrive if couples don't argue and if they don't understand communication style. And the same is true for our professional teams. It's important that we acknowledge the strengths, the culture, and experiences of those with whom we negotiate and who we work with, and not to make assumptions, especially for those of you who may serve in a leadership role. Being aware of team members' individual strengths, their styles of negotiation and communication, and their values can help in facilitating really tough conversations. Last and most important is that the use of these assessments really create opportunities for intentional discussion, meaningful engagement, and more collaborative work as a team. So I want to talk a little bit about the return on investment and why it's important that we focus on engaging a team, especially in the work that we do. There is a lot of evidence to support the importance of investing in your staff as a whole, but more importantly as individuals. Gallup, which if you are not familiar with Gallup, they have a lot of really great data and research about work engagement. I would encourage you to check that out. Their general definition of employee engagement is those who are involved in, enthusiastic about, and committed to their work and workplace. Gallup has been studying the idea of employee engagement for over 50 years, and it really boils down to this. Engaged employees produce better outcomes than other employees, no matter the job sector, no matter the size of the organization, or the economic stresses the company or the organization may face. It's in this element of team engagement that we really see the cross-section between the assets of a personality test with the positive outcomes it can have on our people, our team, and the work that we do. So maybe you define a positive outcome as being reduced staff turnover due to greater buy-in for the mission of the organization. Or maybe it's empowering one another to use our gifts and strengths in how we approach our work. I did put an asterisk next to reduce staff turnover because what this does not account for are the other key factors in staff retention, which may include promotion opportunities and salary, could include pursuit of further education, change in family circumstances, among other considerations. Even with staff turnover, losing a team member who is otherwise engaged and they are leaving for circumstances unrelated to team inclusion and feeling appreciated is a win over losing a fantastic individual who may not feel that they are appreciated, that their gifts are appreciated, or that they're not comfortable within that team setting. So I would encourage you before going down this path of preparing for a discussion of personality strengths as a part of team building, that it's important to acknowledge how crucial that follow-up component is. These tests, discussions of what one another can bring to a team or a project, really, how past experiences may impact results on a personality test will help to breed a culture of trust and inclusion. But only if these exercises and discussions become an ingrained part of your company culture. Otherwise, you run the risk of asking employees to reveal personal and professional vulnerabilities for a one-time exercise with no action taken in the days, weeks, or months to come. And that will likely have an inverse effect and lead to disengagement and lack of confidence in the team. Gallup really confirms what may be considered as a no-brainer, that people want purpose and meaning in their work. We all want to be known for what makes us unique, to feel appreciated at the center of the work, have meaningful relationships with our coworkers, and feel championed by our supervisors. So some reflection questions that I ask myself and would encourage you to ask yourself as well. How do we do this intentionally? Where does the onus lie on facilitating these conversations? And how do we shift culture to increase employee engagement? I want to take a couple of minutes to talk through some data and this particular image. Really, the short answer is that company culture and engagement is set from those who are in leadership. So if you are on this call as someone who oversees a team or oversees a project, or you are aspiring to step into that role, please know that there's a lot of onus that lies on leadership. According to a recent Gallup study, managers or team leaders alone account for 70% variance in team engagement. Individualized information that is communicated clearly is essential. So examples being the decision to return to campus may be best delivered individually, knowing that the message going to someone who's eager to come back may look and feel differently than speaking with someone who may have significant reservations. Dispersing of new projects, feedback, recognition, performance reviews, etc., really are not a one-size-fits-all approach. There are members of my team who I know are motivated by public recognition, and others who recoil at the idea of being praised in a staff meeting. There are some who crave constructive criticism at each turn, and others who truly dread an annual performance review. And as managers, we need to be acutely aware of our team members' individual strengths, their needs, their styles of communication, in order for us to appropriately support them. In a normal year, we are pulled in so many different directions, but the stresses of this year are difficult to articulate in a way that accurately captures the range of emotions, fears, triumphs, and grief that we experience on a weekly or daily basis. Um, Gallup studies indicate that honestly, manager engagement is too low. As leaders, whether we are VPs, deans, directors, first-time managers, whatever your title or role is, we absolutely set the tone for engagement of the people who report to us. Keeping people informed, providing feedback, setting priorities are absolutely crucial. So our audience represents such an array of experiences, both new to the profession, seasoned professionals. I really want to take a couple of minutes to speak to those who are in that role as a manager. If you've not taken the time to check in on the well-being of your staff, really ask them more than just the passing Zoom call or maybe in the hallway interaction of how you're doing. If you ask them in a group setting or individually how they're doing, the question is why. If you have not done that, why not? Counselor and employee well-being is a significant component of how our individuals feel engaged while they are working for us. And communication and empathy from the top down, it really is a central factor in whether or not employees feel cared about. For the sake of time, I'm going to jump on to the next slide related to the role of a supervisor and sustaining a strong team. So part 2, if you will, that focuses on 2 different sections. So I want to talk about the 5 Ps of persuasion, and then I want to talk about the other variables that Gallup focuses on in terms of engagement. I referenced earlier the importance of negotiation and how our approach should be individualized to those with whom we're communicating. So I want to expand on that for just a minute. Roger Fisher, who is recognized for creating the academic field of conflict resolution and negotiation, he co-founded the Harvard Negotiation Project, identified these 5 Ps of negotiation that I do think are helpful in the context of our discussion of individualizing your approach. Purpose. So you want to enter into your conversations with a purpose. Whether that's a Zoom meeting, you want to make sure it has a clear agenda. You want to clearly articulate that ahead of time. What is our goal here? Doing so is going to create that framework for discussion, allows you, and as Fisher defined, allows you to define who can do what tomorrow morning to move the situation forward to a resolution. So do you see any unused talent or expertise on your team? Do you see a new application for an old gift? Is there a way for them to be more meaningful that is not apparent to them? You also want to enter into these conversations with perception. So if you're trying to come to a resolution for a conflict or a project, it's helpful to know where your conversation partner's mind is. And this is where the individual strengths really come into play. Humble yourself, put yourself in someone else's shoes, and being cognizant of individual strengths, background, and life experiences. So you can anticipate where your conversation partner is coming from so you can more quickly come to a resolution. Problem solving, ideation and collaboration is huge. We have a former staff member who did an interview for us, and she was a theater major, and she talked about the idea of yes and, which is an improvisation technique where you push the conversation forward. So in order to empower our staff, let's let ideation happen, knowing that we may eventually have to put some limitations on to where that idea goes. But if we allow our staff to be a part of content creation, you get greater buy-in from your team. Proposition, think of this in line of asking reflection questions. So presenting to your staff, colleague, or team solutions that leave space for open discussion. Again, that's going to create that additional buy-in and allow you to really see individual strengths at play. Lastly, I want to talk about Gallup variables. So these are the other pieces that have a great impact on staff engagement. Flexibility, which may mean flexibility in work hours, flexibility in workspaces. There's a lot of discussion of return to office or remaining virtual or working from home. I would encourage you to ask your team members how they feel about that, whether or not that actually changes the ability to give permission to work from home, but at least offering questions and offering an opportunity for feedback is essential. clear plan of action and communication. Cannot overstate this enough. So making sure that you're tailoring your communication to the individual. So again, you're kind of getting that greater buy-in and helping your staff to feel engaged. Well-being and importance. We all want to know that we feel cared for, that someone is looking out for us, and we want to feel valued and appreciated as part of a team. So as much as you can, both in group settings, from a recognition and feedback standpoint, and an importance of, checking on them and their mental and emotional well-being can help to ensure that your staff members feel engaged. All right, I know that we were absolutely butting up on time. So Amy, I'm going to let you come back on too, so we can talk a little bit about the resources moving forward.
Sorry, I was trying to answer some questions. And if anyone on the webinar also has some insight to these questions, please feel free to chat them in and I'll publish them so everyone can see it.
So some of the resources, these are all of the personality tests that Amy referenced as part of her presentation. And then some additional resources that I used and want to encourage you to check out as well. A number of them are books on professional communications and leadership styles. Fast Company, while they focus primarily on tech and innovation in different business sectors, have found that a lot of their content is really relatable to how we lead a team and how we communicate with our staff. And as I referenced earlier, Gallup is a wonderful tool. Perfect. Thank you so much. I know we just gave you so much information in a hot minute. Hopefully you have found some of these resources, this content to be helpful as you continue in conversations with your team. I know Amy and I would be more than happy to serve as a resource as you all have questions. Amy, have I forgotten anything? Awesome.
Sounds great. Thanks, y'all.
Perfect. Thank you all so much for attending. Enjoy the rest of your virtual SACAC, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions.
Bye, y'all.